Hey guys, it's Penelope in London, and what I'm doing is in front of me you can see, or in front of you you can see trauma responses, and these trauma responses in reference to Pete Walker's work, Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. So when we've been through trauma, we can have recalled memory or we can have implicit memory, and a lot of trauma that plays out early in our lives ends up being repeated through our lives until we get to a point where we begin to understand what we need to do to solve it. And there are various ways that we can help ourselves. There's no quick fixes. It's many things. People can try all sorts of things, from EMDR to psychoanalysis to somatic work to reading books, watching YouTubes. So there are hundreds and hundreds of ways, and we're all unique. So we're all doing things at different times and we all have different understandings. So when we look at trauma responses, what we want to do firstly is to understand what is happening inside of us so we can begin to gain some understanding to move through our emotions and not repress them, because repressing emotions means that we will, as you can see on the screen here, go into the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn modes. So we got fight, flight, freeze, fawn. So I'm going to read a bit what Pete Walker says on the different defenses that we have, because basically the fight, flight, freeze, fawn are defense mechanisms that it's either that we're not feeling safe or we feel that by doing certain things we will feel safe. So let's go through this first. We got the fight. Now, when I say this narcissistic bit, please do not take that literally, because we've all got narcissism. The first 2 years of life, it's purely about us, and that is what narcissism is. It's purely about self. And then as we grow and develop, we begin to understand that there are other people in the world, and we begin to integrate the understanding. So, but however, if we've been through very heavy-handed trauma or had very bad experiences, the fight mode will be an anger outburst. We can feel like we want to control or be controlling. We can sometimes feel or appear to be like we're being a bully, and there could be narcissism there and explosive behavior. So there can be a level of that. It doesn't mean that it's full blown out. It doesn't mean all of them. It could be one of these. We could have an anger outburst. We might want to control something, our environment, or some, people around us, which doesn't sound great, but you get the idea. It's important we understand. Bullying, we know that really that's not a good thing, for us to do. So it's just watching ourselves. And then narcissism, to be purely narcissistic would mean that one would have absolutely no empathy, or cold empathy, as Sam Vaknin would say on YouTube. So, dig deeper. Don't just think you're one thing, and, be careful about labeling yourself. The reason I like complex PTSD is because it's under the umbrella of, it's got a lot of things under it. It's not just one thing, and it's not a disorder in as much that it's a response to events. So as we heal our inner world, then the outer world begins to change too. And then you can see their explosive behavior. And we've got to realize that the fight, flight, freeze, fawn are normal. There's a normal healthy responses to as well, but this is when we're in trauma we're looking at. We've got flight, which is being a workaholic, being an overthinker, anxiety, panic, and OCD, difficulty sitting still, and perfectionism, being a perfectionist. Freeze is where we have difficulty making decisions, where we feel stuck, disassociation, isolating, numb. And then fawn is where we're the people pleaser, lack of our own identity, no boundaries or few boundaries, overwhelmed and codependent. So when we look at the freeze here, we can see that, we all go through these. We might bounce in and out of these, particularly of what's going on right now in the world. There's a lot of emotions that are being stuffed down, and we're in situations that may be very difficult for us. So we have to be gentle on ourselves and do the inner child work and click in and understand that when we begin to work on the inner critic and begin to get that inner critic out of our system, and then we stop punishing ourselves. And when we begin to nurture the inner child, this is for male and female, it's not just one-sided, we become the healthy parent, the healthy mother, and the healthy father to our inner child. And we're educated in society, not to do that. We're not taught that. And I hope there comes a stage where children are taught this, at some point, you know, maybe not in their early years, but when they begin to get into their teens, about what that means, the reparenting and understanding, being the good mother and father to your inner child. So let's go for this now. We're going to read the fight type, and we're going to start with that and then move on through the 4 different types. So the fight types are unconsciously driven by the belief that power and control can create safety. And, you know, meaning also that we don't have this sense of abandonment and secure love and that we're looking for. So we're trying to control that. Yeah. Children who are spoiled and given insufficient limits, a uniquely painful type of abandonment, and children who are allowed to imitate the bullying or narcissistic parent may develop a fixated response to being triggered. These types learn to respond to their feelings of abandonment with anger and subsequently use contempt, a toxic amalgam of narcissistic rage and disgust, to intimidate and shame others into mirroring them and into acting as extensions of themselves. So this is what narcissism is. It's where you don't take other people's views into account and you want somebody to act as an extension of yourself. And you can do more, you know, I'll put a link below to Sam Vaknin's video, and so that you can check him out because he understands this stuff. He's a professor in the matters of personality disorders. And also, Pete Walker goes on to say, the entitled flight type commonly uses others as an audience for his incessant monologuing, and may treat a captured freeze or fawn type as a slave or prisoner in a dominance submission relationship. Especially devolved fight types may become sociopathic, ranging along a continuum that stretches between the corrupt politician and the vicious criminal. So we can see this playing out in society, and we're not to think badly of ourselves if we say, oh yeah, I'm a bit that way. It's like we can evolve this if if it's trauma-based and we get the proper help. You know, I'm not Sam Vaknin, so he knows more about this. I've been watching him for months now, educating myself, but also the Pete Walker work is brilliant. So now I'm going to read the flight type. You see here, workaholic, overthinker, anxiety, panic, OCD. So we'll have when we're in trauma, we're going to have 1 or 2 or 3, you know, maybe that we're playing out at a regular interval. So the flight type and the obsessive compulsive defense. And we remember these are defenses. That's what's going on in trauma. Flight types appear as if their starter button is stuck on the on position. They are obsessively and compulsively driven by the unconscious belief that perfection will make them safe and lovable. As children, flight types respond to their family trauma somewhere along a hyperactive continuum that stretches between the extremes of the driven A student and the ADHD dropout running amok. They relentlessly flee the inner pain from their abandonment and lack of attachment with a symbolic flight or constant busyness. So you might catch yourself doing that. You know, you're constantly busy. Can you sit still or not? I mean, I'm a Gemini and I do astrology and I'm very active all the time. So we don't want to just rule ourselves out completely, our own personalities, but we do want to look at what's harming us and is our behavior a defense to something? He goes on to say, when the obsessive compulsive flight type is not doing, she or he is worrying and planning about doing. Flight types are prone to becoming addicted to their own adrenalization, and many recklessly and regularly pursue risky and dangerous activities to keep their adrenaline high and going. These types are also susceptible to stimulating substance addictions as they are to their favorite process of addictions, workaholism and busyholism. Severely traumatized flight types may devolve into severe anxiety and panic disorders. So I experienced that. You know, I had a business and I was, you know, running around all the time. And then Eventually it did become, when I stopped disassociating, because I used to drink alcohol, I don't anymore. I stopped in 2012, not had a drop, and it was a great thing that I did for myself, because I was drinking on trauma and disassociating with that. And when I did stop disassociating, I did experience the severe anxiety and panic disorders, but now I've continued with the work. I don't experience those anymore. So we can keep on moving forward. Now, the freeze types you have here, you see this? You have the freeze types and the dissociative defense. Many freeze types unconsciously believe that people and danger are synonymous, and that safety lies in solitude. Outside of fantasy, many give up entirely on the possibility of love. The freeze response, also known as the camouflage response, often triggers the individual into hiding, isolating, and running away from human contact as much as possible. This type can be frozen into retreat mode, and it seems as if their starter button is stuck in the off position. It is usually the most profoundly abandoned child, the lost child, who is forced to choose and habitate to the freeze response. The most primitive of the 4 Fs. That's when Pete Walker says that's the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, 4 Fs. Unable to successfully employ the fight, flight, or fawn responses, the freeze types defenses develop around classical disassociation, which allows them, or him or her, to disconnect from experiencing his abandonment pain and protects him from risky social interactions, any of which might trigger feelings of being re-abandoned. Freeze types often present an ADD that they seek refuge and comfort in prolonged bouts of sleep, daydreaming, wishing, and right-brained dominant activities like TV, computer, and video games. They master the art of changing the internal channel whenever inner experiences become uncomfortable. And when they are especially traumatized or triggered, they may exhibit a schizoid-like detachment from ordinary reality. So, you may see this in other people, you may see it in yourself. Now, the final one is the Fawn one, which is, ultimately codependency. It's where maybe as with children, we've had to be very good, or if we've been through abuse, we had to tiptoe around, we had to be people pleasers. Maybe we weren't allowed to talk, or we weren't allowed to make noise, or, maybe we got punished just for being our childlike self. And this is wrong that adults do this, but we know that we get to reparent ourselves. And then as we do that, we're, healing the children that are coming through as well, because we become better people. So then what we have is the Fawn types and the codependent defense. And Fawn types seek safety by merging with the wishes, needs, and demands of others. They act as if they unconsciously believe that the price of admission to any relationship is the forfeiture of their needs, rights, preferences, and boundaries. They often begin life like the precocious children described in Alice Miller's The Drama of the Gifted Child, who learn that a modicum of safety and attachment can be gained by becoming the helpful and compliant servants of their parents. They are usually the children of at least one narcissistic parent who uses contempt to press them into service, scaring and shaming them out of developing a healthy sense of self, an egoic locus of self-protection, self-care, and self-compassion. This dynamic is explored at length, and he says he's got a webpage, I'll put that below as well, Pete Walker, in the East Bay Therapist article, February 2003, Codependency, Trauma, and the Fawn Response. So he says, see PeteWalker.com, it's actually www.pete/Walker, not /Walker.com. So he says the Fawn types typically respond well to being psychoeducated in this model. This is especially true when the therapist persists in helping them recognize and renounce the repetition compulsion that draws them to narcissistic types who exploit them. Therapy also naturally helps them to shrink their characteristic listening defense as they are guided to widen and deepen their self-expression. I have seen numerous inverted codependents finally progress into their assertiveness and boundary making work when they finally got that even the thought of expressing a preference or need triggers an emotional flashback of such intensity that they completely disassociate from their knowledge and ability to express what they want. Role-playing assertiveness in session and attending to the stultifying inner critic processes, it helps the codependent build a healthy ego. So there is such a thing as a healthy ego. You know, in spirituality, it can be maddening because people say, get rid of your ego. We don't want to do that. We've got a healthy ego and we have an unhealthy ego, and then we have sort of a neutral ego on certain things. So we need to educate ourselves on that. Pete Walker goes on to say, this is especially true when the therapist interprets, witnesses, and validates how the individual as a child was forced to put to death so much of his or her individual self. Grieving those losses further potentiates the developing ego. So now we're going on. And also, if you're listening to this video, please give me a like or leave a comment below or subscribe. That would be great. I'm building my channel and helping people. So let's go to the next slide. So this is something I came across sort of in words and I thought was useful. So emotional wounds and feeling emotional pain points to an incomplete cycles of our experience. So when we keep looping the same experience, like you might realize we keep meeting the same type of person, or where we keep doing the same thing, but we've got to understand that we're peeling back the layers. So we're going through life and we're peeling back the layers. And the pain is that, we're trying to make something conscious and we haven't yet quite clicked what it is. So emotional wounds let us know that we have not yet come to the end of a particular story. So the end of a particular story is when we say, wow, I get it. It's like watching a movie and you go, you sit there, and then at the end of the movie, you understand what the whole movie was about and what it was for and what the purpose of it was. And sometimes there is not a purpose. Sometimes stuff happens that's so traumatic and painful and there is no lesson. There is no, this is another thing in spirituality. People say, oh, we're here to learn lessons. Some people go through such traumatic stuff that telling them that it's a lesson is just offensive. So we have to watch how we communicate with each other. And this, an evolutionary astrology friend of mine, that's why I've put that there, because I love my astrology. So this is again connected to what we've just said, know thyself. We know that that's, I can't recall if that was an unknown, but know thyself. And then when we feel confused or upset by or obsessed by another or whatever, that is our unconscious trying to work towards individuation and consciousness. So if we understand that, if we just take this little bit of information in, knowing that when we're in pain and we feel, we feel the jealousy, or we feel obsession, or we feel we're addicted to something, or we haven't quite figured something out and we're struggling with it, what we've got, if we know that it's basically we are unconscious trying to make something conscious, we're going to feel much better about ourselves. And then we can be kinder to our inner child and stop, giving it nasty words and the inner critic stuff. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stay on this beautiful swan. And a friend on Facebook actually took a picture of this called Deb Power. It's beautiful. I love this picture. So let's do a quick list of a shortened list of Pete Walker's steps, 13 steps for managing flashbacks. So this is the short version, and you can get the longer version on his page. And remember, I'm putting the link below this video. Pete Walker, I think it's -.com. Okay, so 13 steps for managing flashbacks. So number 1, say to yourself, I am having a flashback. Now, when you do that, you're bringing yourself into the here and now. If somebody triggers you and you can say, I'm having a flashback, you're going to not go into the panic mode as much. Number 2, remind yourself, I feel afraid, but I am not in danger. So important. You're not we're not children. And I don't mean that getting at anybody and saying that. I have to remind myself sometimes, say to yourself, that I know I'm afraid, I feel afraid, but I'm not in danger. Because often what we're flashing back to is childhood stuff where we felt we were in danger, and we're not anymore as adults generally. But if we are, we know what the hell to do. That's what I would say. We get away from danger. Number 3, own your right and need to have boundaries. Now, this is something we learn. So we can learn boundaries by practicing them. We don't have to be all or nothing. We can say, oh, today I'm going to practice but I'm having a difficult time with this person and I'm going to practice some new boundaries. And we don't have to be too strict, but we can begin, and then we can see, oh, what happens when I have that boundary? And then we learn to, integrate those new boundaries as well. Number 4, speak reassuringly to the inner child. Really important. Your inner child, we all have one. Speak reassuringly to it. Tell it it's love, saying, what do you need? Are you hungry? Are you tired? Speak to your inner child. Build a relationship with your inner child. Number 5, deconstruct eternity thinking. So right now we're going through something in society that can feel absolutely horrific to us. We're going through this, virus that's going around. And we've got to understand that this is not, if we can say to ourselves that this is not forever, nothing lasts forever, things happen and then they change. So we need to know, deconstruct eternity thinking. Number 6, remind yourself that you are in an adult body with allies. We've got friends, all of us. I do know that. I go through stages where I think I haven't got any friends, but there's always somebody there for me. So with allies, skills and resources to protect you that you never had as a child. Feeling small and little are sure signs that we're in a flashback. So if you feel small or little, you can be sure that you're in a flashback. And then you can say, oh, I'm in a flashback. That was number 1. Number 7, ease back into your body. Fear launches us into a heady worrying or numbing and spacing out. So we've got to ease ourselves back into the body. The good thing you can do is tap on your collarbone, the tapping, that will do it. Or you could tap on your, tap slightly on your face or your forehead, just gently say, I'm in my body, I'm in my body, I'm here. As strange as it may sound, it works. And then resist the inner critics drasticizing and catastrophizing. So for instance, I used to really be bad at hypochondria. Everything I had, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Now I realize that, until I get a sign that's really like, not to think the worst, drasticizing, catastrophizing. Number 9, allow yourself to grieve. Flashbacks are opportunities to release old unexpected feelings of fear, hurt, and abandonment, and to validate and then soothe the child's past experience of helplessness and hopelessness. Healthy grieving can turn our tears into self-compassion and our anger into self-protection. So that's the inner, when we look after the inner child, we become the father and the mother to that inner child. Then we can, say it's okay to grieve, it's okay to cry, and then we can soothe the inner child and, help them with their helplessness and hopelessness. And when they're grieving as well, we can be there. Number 10, cultivate safe relationships and seek support. So look around you. Are your relationships safe? If not, begin to work on that. And seek support. There is so much support in this world. I was shocked at how I denied myself support for many, 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 many years. I used to disassociate to the point of being in my fight, flight, working all the time, nonstop. Let's go back actually to that. I would like to go back to that. So I was always in flight, running a business, running around, overthinking, worrying, anxiety, panic, couldn't sit still, wanted to be perfectionist. I wasn't good enough. So, 11 is learn to identify types of triggers that lead to flashbacks. So if going somewhere or hanging out with somebody is going to trigger you, don't do it. You don't have to do things you don't want to do as an adult. As children, we're stuck, but we're not as adults. Number 12, figure out what you are flashing back to. That's where I was. So that's it. So look at what you're flashing back to. Is it a place? Is it a person? Is it a color? Is it, is it a smell? And then what is that leading back to that's bothering you? And look at it. Don't be afraid of it. I know things I flash back to, or smells that, if somebody's cooking a stew, for instance, I had flashbacks to a moment where that was very disturbing for me. So, I get nauseated if I smell the stew cooking, and I know that I don't like it. So I'm definitely not cooking it. And I know what's going on when that happens now, and I can comfort myself and understand. Number 13, be patient with a slow recovery process. Now, Pete Walker says, very importantly, that we have to not do the savior thinking there's some magic therapy out there that's going to heal everything, because I used to think like that, and it's not the case. We're on a journey. We don't know when we're going to get triggered. So if we can say, you know, I have good days, I have bad days, I have in between days, and then I have really great days, everything is moving. And we don't, you know, look at what's going on in the world. Everybody's going through something right now. Last but least, I'm going to read some reparenting affirmations that I'd like to read to you if you want to play these back, or I'm going to put them in the comments box on the YouTube, actually, the first comments box on this YouTube, so you can copy and paste them and read them to yourself. So reparenting affirmations. So I am so glad that you were born. You are a good person and I love you. And I'm going to do my best to always be on your side. You can come to me whenever you're feeling hurt or bad. You do not have to be perfect to get my love and protection. All of your feelings are okay with me. And I'm always glad to see you. It's okay for you to be angry. And I won't let you hurt yourself or others when you are. You can make mistakes. They are your teachers. You can know what you need and ask for help. And you can have your own preferences and tastes. You are a delight to my eyes. You can choose your own values. You can pick your own friends. And you don't have to like everyone. You can sometimes feel confused and ambivalent and not know all the answers. And I am very proud of you. So whoever's out there, I'm very proud of you for listening to this video and doing this work. And like my video because I'm growing my channel. I'll catch you later and thanks for watching.